Hello everybody, welcome to the Baantu channel where we explore Baantu and human design, which for those of you not familiar with it are based on the prophecies of Ra Uru Hu, and you can find out a lot more at www.baantu.com. We have about 7 languages there, and where you can do your own chart, and explanations are written out for you there, and there's a links to buy the books. This week we're going to look at Bruce Willis, Out from Under the Eye, and that's what I'm calling these little segments on people in the public eye and celebrities, and just trying to get an idea too of how mass media has distorted our eye. The last 400 years or so in this cross of planning that we've been in, it is coming to an end. According to Ra's prophecies, it's coming to an end in 2027. When I first heard about all of this, which was about 10 years ago, it seemed like there was some truth to it back then, but in the events of the last 2 years, it seems as though this is giving that prophecy a little bit more credence, and I feel a little bit more comfortable talking about some of these things, I suppose, in a more public way than I did even 2 years ago. And with this era that we've been in, with this super logistical, super logical, this ability to distribute the foundation of nation states, behind all that has been our sense of vision. So mankind's vision and the visionary skills that go into being able to plan for the future, to look for patterns that will ensure our individual success and our success as a collective. And vision has been behind that. We take vision for granted a lot. We think it's, just seeing the clarity of, outlines or numbers, or going to the doctors and doing those tests. But vision is so much more than that. It's not just 20/20 vision. These visionary skills that have allowed man to use its bifocal skills, the left eye and the right eye moving in coordination, moving in unison, working as a team. We take that for granted. That wasn't always the case, and we really take that for granted. This ability, for 3-point perspective, and enhanced our way to see patterns. It's enhanced our way to compete. It's enhanced our artistic abilities, and this has all led to what we see now, but we're starting to see the breakdown. We are starting to see, the end of supply chain and efficiencies and just-in-time inventory. And maybe time will tell. Maybe this is just a little bump in the road, but this does fit with this prophecy so far. And with this coming to an end, it's no surprise we're seeing this degradation in our eyes through media. And it's really no irony. We're seeing this with Hunter Biden and the laptop from hell, which, if you've seen some of those images, it seems to cap off our era, and many societies toward the end, or empires when they reach the end, there is this degradation, there is this decadence. And we're certainly seeing that at play here. And we're certainly seeing it with mass media manipulation. This is also playing with our senses and not making us trust our eyes so much, not making us trust our intelligence, our internal intelligence so much. It is so blinding, if you like, when you get bombarded with the same headline and the same story over and over, even though the facts might suggest something else. And I'm taking a look at Bruce Willis here, because he was just announced that he is retiring from his movie career. And he's stepping away, as the family says, stepping away from his career after aphasia diagnosis. When you read between the lines, when you actually read what aphasia is, so, it's a very genteel headline. Identikit press releases from Demi Moore, his ex-wife, and his daughter, Rumor. And in my earlier video, I talked about how that is, a real technique. That's a sign to look for. If the same pictures use the same text coming from many different people, that this is a press press campaign. This is many hands went in behind writing these words, picking every word, picking the photo. The fact that his ex-wife and his daughter don't feel comfortable enough to deviate from that and really speak from the heart during that initial announcement tells me this is a major campaign to spin it a certain way and to blind us with the science of aphasia, when the truth of it is that Bruce has had a stroke, and Bruce is severely impaired, and Bruce is he's got severe brain impairments. The Mayo Clinic reports aphasia as a condition that affects your ability to communicate, affecting speech as well as the way a person writes and understands both spoken and written language. No cause has been revealed, but the clinic says aphasia is typically the result of a stroke or head injury. Well, hello, bingo. But, you see how they write it and you see how they present it. It's really blinding us with the science of it, of what's aphasia. And, I saw some articles saying, well, 10 steps to realize if you have aphasia. Well, believe me, you'll know if you have aphasia. I've had family members who had aphasia because they had severe strokes. And believe me, you will know, you'll know when you can't speak. And the image that really came to me of all this, with this kind of genteel, presentation of it, how different would it be if the family said Bruce Willis had a severe stroke and is in a coma? Wouldn't that change our whole reaction to all of this? The immediate reaction I had when I read this is that, this movie, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which is about a man who does have a severe stroke, and the movie presents his life in view from the one remaining eye that can see out, and it's distorted because it's the one eye, so it doesn't have that bifocal vision. So how it affects how he is seeing the world and the perspective of the world, and he might see the outlines perfectly fine with that eye, but without the other eye working in conjunction, just how limiting it is and how trapped he is within. And I thought that was such an analogy almost with, our times, and how, man has evolved with his eyes, and how it's sort of failing us now too in different ways, but we have Bruce Willis, I believe this character, like this movie, where he's really trapped within looking out. And I got very annoyed when I read this article, because this is such a, and again, it's typical, it is just so typical with our conditioning field right now, which I went into great detail in earlier videos, what we're dealing with now with the mass manipulation, and we're ripe for it. We haven't had a transit field like this since the 1850s, which was, right before the Civil War in the US. So we are ripe in manipulation. But I mean, how sad that it has to extend to a family, that even the family cannot be honest and say, look, our Bruce, our beloved Bruce, had a horrible stroke. Instead, it's, oh, he's got health conditions that are, affecting his, cognitive abilities. Oh, yes. And, they're really trying to spin it that, this guy has been, having these problems for the last, several years or so. And it's more than that. I mean, they clearly in this article too, the wife is doing everything she can. Yeah, because the wife is, not he is. The wife is. She's working with the professionals. She's dealing with this because he is like this character in this movie. I mean, he probably cannot move, and I wouldn't be surprised if, he doesn't last long. And I really am sorry to say that, because he's a young man, and he had a very vibrant life. And this too, this flies right in the face of what they're trying to spin, that he's had cognitive impairments for the last several years and it was only getting worse. Well, that directly contradicts, what he's been doing the last couple of years. you know. He has made, since 2020, about 20 films. And some are in post production, about 8 still haven't been released. I mean, this is, and they'll say, oh, well, he had an earpiece in and someone was feeding his lines. Well, okay, he's 67. You know, I he's 67, he's a multimillionaire who probably doesn't feel like memorizing lines, and so what? He could afford to pay someone to be in his ear talking. I mean, this happens all the time in TV news. You have people constantly in your ear telling you this and, mention that and do this. And the auto cue went down, so we'll read you the script. I mean, what is so weird about that? And then if you see the actual pictures, which if you go to Daily Mail, my gosh, they have more videos than you could ever want on Bruce Willis the last few years. Everything from hoisting his young daughter over a fence on a Thanksgiving day to dancing with Demi Moore in the kitchen and cheering on his daughter, riding the bike, and here with his wife on a bike or motorcycle or something. I mean, this was a very active man, a very lively man, very happy man, surrounded by all his women. And you don't get the sense from any of these photos that, he can't move. I mean, he's dancing, for gosh sakes. He's very lean. He's very trim for 67. I think in physical health, I mean, looks really amazing. Could he still do those stunts that he was doing in Die Hard? Well, no, of course not. He probably couldn't do that in his 40s. I mean, the family's also trying to spin it saying, oh, well, he sold all these properties the last several years because his health was so deteriorating. Oh, blah, 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 blah. I mean, he sold them, and you can see here, this just one article here. He sold his Westchester County, New York home here. And I might say he sold most of these properties at a loss. So he could have, too, wanted to raise money. And that might have been, too, behind him making a lot of movies, with a big family now, a big blended family with 2 wives living with you and 5 daughters and 2 little ones, I am sure he has to work, or you have to adjust your lifestyle. And he was doing both. And, he says here they sold their Westchester County, New York home. And Willis said at the time, the only reason we are giving it up is because we are far from our California family, meaning Demi Moore, his ex-wife, and his 3 daughters, which is why we have decided to return to the West Coast and make our home there. So, all this talk that, oh, he was offloading his property portfolio the last several years because he knew he was in such terrible health is not true. It's bogative. And again, it's real half-truths. And, how much of this is our eye being forced to look here, look there, but, look anywhere but at reality of what's going on. Pfizer, in the meantime, about last week or so, recalled some of its high blood pressure drugs over possible cancer risk. How much news did that get? Pfizer, in the autumn of 2021, recalled Chantix, its anti-smoking treatment, that it was on the market for something like 15 years. Okay, so 15 years. People trying to quit smoking for their health, taking Chantix, only to risking their health with high levels of cancer-causing agents. How much attention did any of this get? And it's this constantly our eye being manipulated into not looking in reality being twisted, being distorted, really distorted, being forced to look at things or not look at things, to suit the agenda and the narrative, and what that does to us as a people, how that affects our sense of reality and our ability to plan our own lives. Let's take a look at Bruce Willis's human design chart. He is a 1-3, his profile, he's a generator. He's a pure generator here, with that channel, the 1034, connected to the G. So, highly directed in life. And I like this, I love the visuals of these charts because it tells you something too. And you can see he's like a tight, neat little bundle of energy here. And that 4629 is such a physical channel. And he was so physical. I mean, his movies were so physical. And again, working until, he couldn't because of a stroke, clearly. But, working to support his family. And working is in the flow of life, and he could afford it. And he could afford to, hire people to help him memorize his lines and stuff. He is, with his tones, a highly visual being, and someone both on the mind and body side. And I'm combining a little bit of Baantu here. So this is human design. But in Baantu, we call the personality the mind, and we call the design the body, as it just explains it more and gets to the essence with the mind's intelligence and the body's intelligence. And we talk about a lot of this in yoga, where, that's what, part of what yoga is. It's unifying your mind with your body. Both have their own intelligence, and unifying the two of them. And that's the true marriage in life. So if we look at his mind intelligence, the tone, that's what his mood is. I mean, this is a guy who wants success. He wants respect and recognition. He wants to be seen. He wants applause. He wants the plaudits. And so, too, that's a great motivator, too, to keep working as well on a deep level. The body, the same thing. This is this need for physical respect and recognition. On the mind side, he was not overtly political in this day and age. And that may have helped him, too, in, he did not really wanting to get involved in that. Which you can see here with the one on the mind side, the confidence level, and then also his, the restlessness level. How much did he need to put things out there, of his own? Reading scripts is one thing, but actually going out there on campaigns and agendas. It seemed like he was quite satisfied living in Idaho with his extended family. And from what I understand, his first and second wives, were living there. His second wife looks a lot like Demi Moore, and they seem really close. If we look at his sun on the mind side, it is in gate 25 in the G. I mean, he's got a lot going on with this G. This is, highly directed, and love. There's a lot of love. He had to do things out of love, Bruce Willis. He wasn't going to, he doesn't have this defined. He's not out of success. He doesn't have mood setters for success. That's all ancillary to this need for respect and recognition. And he would want that within his own family as well. This is a love bug. He's got he has to be around people he loves. Even if Demi Moore and he had knockout, bang out arguments, and we'll look at their chart in a minute, he loves her, and, that's really important to be around that, and you can just see it as pictures, it's just, he loves his family, and they love him, and they respect him, and that comes out in this heavily, defined, accentuated G center, the love, is where he gets his direction. And he's got this gate 25, which is the gate of the spirit of the self, innocence, the perfection of action through uncontrived and spontaneous nature. Yeah, because it's love. It's just, it's not strategizing. It's not thinking about success. It's not being caught up in his emotional thingy. It's so pure almost, and I'm not a huge Bruce Willis fan, but I sort of liked him when I see his chart, and I feel for him, having gone through a stroke, because again, I've had family who've gone through that, and you can't help but feel for someone who's in that condition. Line 1, selflessness, the universalization of activity. I mean, his movies were, universalizing these men of action. Psychic attunement, that is its own reward. The potential for centering through attunement to challenges. Well, again, it sounds like his movie roles and him were very much aligned. In detriment, a tendency to publicize one's selflessness, the insecurity of the self manifested in times of challenge. I don't really think we saw that with him, tell you the truth. Let's look for fun at Bruce and Demi's relationship because Demi came out with the same identikit press release as her daughter. You know, she's definitely taking a back, you know, she's on the back foot with the wife. But when I heard about all this, I did read a little bit more about what is going on. And I mean, apparently they do live together in Idaho. Bruce and his second wife are up there with their two young daughters, and Demi has a guest house there, or she's more than that. I mean, I think she's actually living there. And it does sound like they all get along. And again, there's a lot of respect there. And you can see when you look at Bruce and Demi's relationship on the Baantu chart, Baantu software system, you can see our relationship rating. And it rates a relationship between 0 stars, you could have none of these stars filled in, to 5 stars. And it's based on a lot of different metrics and a lot of different parameters that are put in. And at the top here is compatible. And, you know, out of a 5-star relationship, they have 4 stars. For Demi, it is a 5-star relationship here. For Bruce, not so much. But it's very interesting that Demi, you know, for her, Bruce is slightly more attractive. And I don't mean physically, but in terms of what she would like to, what she aspires toward. You see those green lights. And for both of them, they did not find each other annoying, which, you know, it's the simple things in life. How pleasant are you of a person to deal with? I mean, just to be pleasant and not annoy people. Um, you know, is half the battle in any relationship. In a marriage, to have both parties not find the other one annoying is a huge plus. So you really get a sense when they divorced that it was a lot of the Hollywood BS pressures and a lot of maybe infidelities, maybe temptations, maybe getting bored, maybe getting restless. I'll have to look at Demi's restlessness meter, but I mean, you could see here Bruce on the mind side is not particularly restless, but on his body side, there is this restlessness with this 3 here. You know, he's initiating, he's looking for action, you know, and then he's got 3 here too. So, yeah, I mean, you know, and I'd have to look at Demi's, but I mean, you could see where he would have a wandering eye. Certainly, he would have somewhat of a wandering eye about things. Not saying he did anything, but, you know, there's a restlessness there. I guess let's just conservatively say there's certainly a restlessness on Bruce's side. And if you look too, it's certainly a nice he likes this. He loves, you know, he likes Demi and she's not annoying and attractive, but I mean, it's not like, oh my God, 5-star, you know. So um again, it was probably just the pressures of both their fame, having all that money. They had 3, you know, young kids at the time, which also adds to huge pressures on a marriage. But you can see, no matter with these high star relationships, it's like no matter how much you try to cut things out or cut the other person out, it's like you can't. You know, there's such a bond and such a deep bond. And of course, this doesn't talk about love. We don't measure love there, but I mean, look at look at this G center. It's really defined, and there's a lot of love there. Um, and again, Bruce is not the type to be around people he doesn't love, or be involved in projects he doesn't love, or there's something he loves. You know, it's got to be the love is a pretty big foundation to him. So I thought that was interesting, and you can see now, you know, why they'd still be married. So even though they're divorced, they are still intimately, you know, cooking in the kitchen together. I've seen photos of this. They're cooking together and dancing together, and you know, they can't extricate themselves from this. though it seems like they have moved on in a healthy way. I like them more when I look at their charts. I don't know why. It's funny how that is. If we look at what's coming up, the transits for Bruce, April 30th is a solar eclipse, and this is April 30th, and the transit field at that time. You can see his sun here is in that gate 25 that we talked about, which is right along this major conjunction of um, Venus, Jupiter, and Neptune. This is going to be a big conjunction, and you can see Neptune and Jupiter in particular. That's huge. This is like once in a kind of lifetime thing that you're going to see. And it's right next to his natal sun there in gate 25. He's a Pisces. Um, if we go down to the solar eclipse, sun moon, it's in the lineup there with his natal Mars in gate 2, with Uranus is conjunct that. And this will be his house of loss and common property. This lineup falls into his house of partnerships. This is about loss. So, I looked at that and look at his Mars, which is, an aggressive, force of, aggressive, warrior like, fiery part of him that is just really getting bombarded here. So, something to just keep in mind as we hear the news flow coming out about this, that, and the other thing with Bruce. Mars he's got Mars in gate 2 for him, the gate of higher knowing, the receptivity is the primal base through that any response is determined, the root of action. He has it in detriment, line 2, genius, detriment, genius as madness, knowledge exclusively as power for the enhancement of the ego, the delusion that knowledge is power. In exaltation, the inner strength to focus and realize. A natural gift for unlearnable knowing. So I don't know how that really fits here with anything, but something to just maybe just think on if you're a Bruce Willis fan, or if you find any of this remotely interesting. Again, with this Bruce Willis story, I was surprised to hear it because, again, he'd been very active, and how they're spinning it, it's like a don't look there, look here, look there, look anywhere but at what's, going on, and, look, and again, I was, I guess, a little disappointed with his family for, hiding the fact he's had a stroke. And not being honest about, the underlying condition that brought on the fact he can't speak and can't talk and can't communicate, and it just, it doesn't help. It doesn't help anybody in this day and age. And maybe, again, this is exactly what you expect to see at the end of the, cross of planning, where we have relied on vision to, help us determine our future in a pattern that, we're getting constant distortions on that. And again, not the truth about a lot of other deaths or illnesses. Somebody sent me this from the Netherlands, Cedric Bakeland, cyclist, having a heart attack at age 28. I've since read about 3 other cyclists out of Europe dying in the last week or so. Jeff Carson, a country musician, died. We have the owner of the Ottawa Senators, a hockey team, dying March 28th. A 34-year-old mother of 2 died of a sudden and catastrophic brain bleed after the vaccine. I mean, they're coming out right and saying this in this article. Most of this, you're not getting any mention of the C word, let alone the V word. So again, the last 2 years or so, you couldn't read an obituary without hearing the C word in it. And now we're not hearing the C word, or certainly not the V word. Closer to where I'm at in New Jersey, a 34-year-old woman gave birth to a healthy boy, Jace, but never left the hospital. After 2 months, she lost her battle with COVID-19 just after turning 34. Okay, so they do mention the C word, but we don't know about the V word. Was she V'd? We don't know that. And I mean, the Foo Fighter guy died, and yes, he was doing drugs, but his heart was twice the size of normal. I don't mean to laugh, but it's just, it's almost farcical how you're hearing about this, and yet nobody wants to really put two and two together. In the meantime, we're gonna take a look at Dad Biden here, and his recent comments about suggesting a coup in Russia, regime change. All roads, of course, leading to Ukraine through his son Hunter, the Hunter Biden. And again, it's really, we've been forced the last 17 months not to look there. Don't look there. Don't look there. Don't look there. And now, the truth is coming out. It's impossible to keep contained. And we do have a solar eclipse for, coming up that's going to be affecting Joe Biden. I'm going to take a look at this in another video. We just don't have time now. But incidentally, March 29th, some questions on Biden's health came up about, and this is from the White House Briefing Direct, what are his medications? Is he taking any medications? So, it's interesting what the press corps might be hearing on that front. And then talking about poisoning with the Ukrainian peace negotiation team. Some people were hearing about that, and some reporters asked about that as well. So we're going to be taking a look at that as we go forward. And again, not to be caught up with this distorted lens of our mass media, but to go within as much as possible and adopt that innocent childlike eye of what is in front of you, without the interpretation, without the judgment, without a lot of intellectual contrivance and explanations, and that Sungate 25 innocence. Here we go with that. There's an innocent eye that we all need to try to cultivate as we go through this. So anyway, I will be back with more. I'm also going to do something on Jada and Will Smith, but I'm going to leave it for now. Thank you so much for being here and joining me, and I'll be back. Take care. Bye-bye.